welcome to another episode of Scanning the Market. Today I'm joined by Tom, who is the Chief Business Officer at AIDOC. If you work in radiology, you've definitely heard the name AIDOC, but what's interesting is how the business has evolved from an AI company specializing in stroke to now a platform company with their AI OS and foundational models. They've surpassed over 100 million analyzed cases and have over 150 health systems using their software. This isn't a pilot company anymore. It's a company that has scaled healthcare infrastructure. Please enjoy the conversation. Yeah, good. Sorry, I've been putting out fires this morning doing the day job, so it's been in my morning. Well, it's 9 a.m. So the day's just started. Are you in the US or are you in Tel Aviv?
I'm in Tel Aviv right now.
Sure. Are you dual
But my day has just started as well, because there are certain days where I work Eastern time when I'm abroad, and this is one of those days. So I just started 2 hours ago.
That's tough. Yeah, when I lived in the UK, I used to have to do the US hours, and I'd start at sort of similar time to you. It is tough after a while.
Yeah, but because I'm a night guy and
Sure.
because I'm pretty dynamic, I moved here 2 years ago. I was in New York for 5 years. My whole life I've been moving back and forth between countries. I just kind of got used to it. Obviously, it's not ideal, but I make it work, and I think it's a good mix.
Nice. What made you make the move?
Just family, friends. I have kids,
Sure.
grandparents, that sort of thing.
Sure. Were you born in Israel or were you born in the
Yeah.
US?
So I was born here. I'm Israeli, but as a kid and then as an adult, I lived in the U.S. multiple times. So I'm kind of a
Sure.
hybrid.
How I guess how often do you travel back to the US?
Like every month or two.
How long was that flight?
11 hours.
I hope it was that consistent they're putting you up in business.
And now
Yeah.
startup mode. But again, luckily I'm a good sleeper on flights, so you can put me
Yeah.
in economy. And if it's a night flight, I'll sleep most of it. So I've learned how to make that work as well. And I'm pretty tall as well, so like my
Sure.
legs are literally like
Oh.
getting
Hey,
squeezed on the.
you need to be speaking to those VCs that are backing you guys saying, well,
Yeah. There is
you might,
money. It's just a
you,
priority and a cultural thing for us. Like,
yeah,
we really believe in, like, we don't want to create a big gap in terms of hierarchy, like
sure.
CXO your business, so for us it's kind of like all or nothing. So if I'm business, everyone's business, and then if everyone's business, that's a lot of money.
Yeah, no, for sure. Well, I guess talking about the business, I mean,
Yeah.
for
Nice
people,
segue.
yeah, for people who still think of ADOC as, like an AI that might flag a PE or,
hmm
in stroke or whatever it may be, how would you describe ADOC today?
Ooh, nice question. I'll describe ADOC today and also describe tomorrow, because tomorrow is very close.
Sure.
So AIDOC today has 3 product lines, one of which is radiology centric, and in that there's a lot of acute triage, just like you mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
But not only that, there are also quantitative, like measurement related algorithms and detection that isn't urgent.
Yep.
So basically, think about it as like the AI platform for diagnostic radiologists.
Sure.
Most of the algorithms there are ours because we've developed many, over 20.
Mm-hmm.
But some are also best of breed third parties. Essentially, from our perspective, we want to cover, and we believe we are covering, the key AI use cases that are relatively mature and valuable. So we now have 9 partners.
Yep.
And if someone has already built something good, there's no reason for me to reinvent the wheel.
Yep.
So that's one part of ADOC. The other part is cross-specialty workflows that
Mm-hmm.
extend downstream to radiology.
Yep.
And in that, there are 2 product lines. There's the stroke, PE, but not what you referred to, more of the downstream to that, the care coordination, the mobile app for different clinicians and surgeons.
Yep.
So extending downstream when it's urgent. And then the other is what we call patient management, but there are lots of names for it: patient navigation, follow-up management, etc., which is the same concept as the acute care coordination, but not acute.
Sure.
So the incidental aneurysm, the old IVC filter that needs to be removed, etc. Same thing, but because it's not acute, the workflow isn't a mobile app ringing in the middle of the night. It's more
Sure.
of a navigation workflow.
Yep.
So that's AIDOC of today. And that's all on top of what we call our AI operating system.
Yep.
Um, everyone uses the term platform nowadays, and it's become something that means nothing.
Yep.
For us, our AIOS is a huge part of our company. Like a major portion of our R&D
Mm-hmm.
expenses and investments are
Yep.
on that AIOS, because
Yep.
ultimately running AI in real health systems is very difficult to do it
Yep.
well. So there's a lot of magic in that. That's
So
AIDOC up today.
just before you get
Yeah.
into the ADOC of the future, my next question was actually going to be, what is the difference between, ADOC and your operating system, so AIOS, and a single algorithm, like for people who are not necessarily aware?
Yeah. So I think there's three kind of stages of maturity. Number one is to create a good algorithm, and even there, all these algorithms sound the same, but there are huge differences between them. But
Yeah.
let's treat it as like a generic thing. So an algorithm is just something that you feed it data. In our case, it's usually medical imaging data, and it spits out a result, like a detection of something.
Mm-hmm.
But if you just have an algorithm, that is useless because physicians need to use it. So then you need to productize that and create like a way to actually provide those results to physicians in a seamless manner. So that's a
Sure.
product. And there are lots of AI companies, each of which has a product.
Mm-hmm.
If I just deployed a point solution like that in a hospital, what would probably happen is, put aside the fact that it's kind of niche and hospital IT doesn't really have bandwidth to deal with all these niche products, etc.
Mm-hmm.
But ultimately, I'll face all these real life problems that are tangential to my product and will influence my product.
Yep.
So, for example, say let's take stroke. Say my product is a stroke AI solution. I need to feed it specific types of scans where stroke might be present, right? So like, how do I recognize those scans? The simple answer is, scans have names, study descriptions. So in your configs, in your configurations, list these names. But
Yep.
a big real life hospital or health system has a million names.
Yep.
And they change, and every technologist could do something a bit different, and they buy a new scanner and it changes, and they change their protocols and it changes. So like in real life, that's going to break relatively quickly. And then what's going to happen is I won't process some of the scans, and then the users will be like, what the heck, how did you miss that?
Yep.
But I didn't miss it, I just never analyzed it. But they don't care, it didn't work, I didn't get an AI result.
Yep.
So that's just one example of why you need an AI operating system versus just a product.
Mm-hmm.
And there are a million others, right? Analytics, value demonstration, downstream workflow integrations in different places, because
Yep.
sometimes there are different users. So lots of stuff there. But that's like the simple
Nice.
answer.
What I'd be curious to know is, you mentioned it obviously as an operating system, and the word that keeps coming up, from just my daily conversations. I did a podcast with Deep Sea, and they were, pushing this sort of avenue a lot, is infrastructure. And
Yeah.
I guess my follow-up question to you is internally, when did ADOC realize that you weren't necessarily just building a product, but you were building infrastructure?
Oh, that's a great question. Uh, Before I answer that, and I will, it's important to understand the challenge for companies in our space.
Yeah.
On one hand, if you are an infrastructure company, you're really dependent on high value use cases to
Yeah.
make your infrastructure needed and valuable.
Hmm.
If you're a point solution company, you kind of need your own or someone else's high value infrastructure to make it work at scale and well.
Yeah.
So there are like two sides to this that are both dependent on the other, and the timing is so critical, and it's really difficult to balance. And I think that's why most of the AI marketplaces kind of got stuck.
Yeah.
Um, and that ties to your question. So why does that tie to the question? Because we didn't start as an infrastructure company. We didn't start as an AIOS. We were an algorithm company that was naive, that realized that, oh crap, for example, one of our first implementations was Cedars-Sinai in LA.
Yeah.
So we came and it was like an ICH algorithm, and we were naive, and we said, okay, let's analyze these study descriptions. And then it started breaking.
Yeah.
And then at a necessity, we moved from being just a product company to building our operating system. Back
Yep.
then, we were well funded and it was a much smaller scale, so we added a few features, etc. So then that's the beginning of becoming infrastructure.
Mm-hmm.
And then as we had different use cases, types of data, types of hospitals, we're like, oh crap, this is like much more difficult than we thought. And then
Yep.
we had to move a lot of our R&D investment to be, for lack of a better term, infrastructure. So that's how it came about. It was built out of necessity. And I
Yep.
think one of our advantages, which honestly wasn't planned, was because we were the algorithm and the product developer, we
Yep.
really knew what the problem was. We built the
Sure.
infrastructure out of necessity. So that's
Sure.
like, I think, a huge advantage in building effect. And by the way, if you think about it, most, like outside of healthcare, most
Yep.
marketplaces
Mm-hmm.
have been built by companies that at the beginning built the product or some of the
Yeah.
products on the marketplace. So they knew what the
Yep.
problem was.
Yeah, that's the whole Harrison sort of pitch, right? Is they knew the challenges of installing and integrating a single point sort of solution, and yeah, I know it's a compare, but built an algorithm.
Yeah, because they also started as an AI
Yeah.
company, and they still mostly are, right? Like an AI product company,
Yeah.
100%. So like, as someone similar to Harrison from that perspective in terms of our
Yeah.
origin, I agree.
Yeah. And so sounded like maybe a little bit of both, but was that more of a commercial decision or a technical decision to go down that infrastructure route?
So to build the operating system for ourselves was a tech product decision because without it, we realized that we're going to reach a dead end. Like our
Sure.
products won't work well. So that wasn't, there's no like ROI commercial upside
Sure.
sort of analysis. It was just like, it's a must. If not, we're going to die.
Yeah.
So that's how it started. Then what happened, which was quite interesting, was because in relative terms, we had good traction in the market.
Yeah.
And our hospital customers believed in us and viewed
Sure.
us as their core AI partner. In many places, we were the first or the central. They came to us and they said, "Hey, AIDOC, can you leverage your strong platform for other AI use cases? We know
Mm-hmm.
you have X. We know you're gonna create Y, but what about Z?"
Yeah.
And they've received pitches from different companies that do Z, but they
Yeah.
couldn't really implement them as point solutions for practical reasons. Plus, they knew that some of these would fail in real life, and they said, "AIDOC, we believe that your platform can make it work well."
Yeah.
So that was one market force. The second market force was some of the smaller AI companies, which were having a hard time getting in and or even
Yeah.
after getting into hospitals, actually implementing effectively.
Yeah.
I think there's recently an article, not specific to clinical AI, but about how like 95% of AI pilots in hospitals fail or something like that.
Yeah.
So they came to us and said, "Hey, can you help us?" So all of a sudden we were like in the middle here, and then we're like, "Oh wow, there's an opportunity here based on real value, not just like a marketing pitch."
Yeah.
And that's when we decided. And then we obviously had commercial considerations as well of how do we open
Yeah.
this up, leverage our assets, and create value for everyone. And by the way, it's important clarifying. Unlike pure marketplace companies, and we're not that.
Yeah.
We don't have like a marketplace fee, a platform
Sure.
fee, an
Nice.
add-on cost. Like one of our conditions with our third-party partners is we sell it at the same rate that you sell it.
Nice.
The hospital isn't going to pay a tax for it being through AIDOC. In fact,
Yeah.
the opposite. We make it cheaper for the hospital to implement it, so they save money
Yeah.
and effort.
Yeah.
And how we make money is by the third party appreciating our value and giving us a cut of their revenue.
Yeah.
And it's worth it. So it's a win-win-win.
Yeah. No, for sure. I mean, I've worked with quite a few companies who are on your platform, and it's always been good feedback. And most of their business is through you.
Yeah.
So it's win-win for everyone, right? And so, I mean, you've been in the AI space what 9 years, right? You're one of the early adopters, and so I want to, I guess, start with the early days, right? And like, if I'm correct in saying, and please correct me if I'm wrong, it was sort of AIDOC was firstly sort of in around the stroke space, but when I first sort of really heard of you guys, it was when you were in PE, right? And it seems that's when adoption really sort of accelerated, and you guys, that's when you got a big round of funding and all that sort of fun stuff, right? Why do you think PE was the commercial breakout in particular?
I think it's a combination. So PE was our, I don't know if it was our third or our fourth
Sure.
product that was FDA cleared.
Yeah.
Uh, PE was it was and is a killer product, killer not
Yeah.
in terms of deadly, but killer in terms of kick ass.
Yeah.
So that's one reason, and I can explain why it's a kick ass product if you want. But I think it's not just that. I think it's just the momentum of two things that happened roughly at that time. One, that we started having a suite of product and we weren't like just
Sure.
a one point solution. So
Hmm.
as the third or fourth, all of a sudden we started getting this portfolio.
Hmm.
Uh, and two, what I said earlier about our operating system, that
Yeah.
started becoming
Sure.
significant and valuable. So
Sure.
all that kind of came together, and then you started having implementations that actually were valuable and worked well.
Yeah.
And then all these things kind of happened, started trending at roughly the same time.
Nice. Okay, so it's more so not coincidental, but sort of timing played a key factor. It just so happened that it was that product alongside the other ones.
Yeah, plus
Okay.
the time periods between the products
Yeah.
like it was 4 months after the previous one and 6 months thereafter there was another one. So
Yeah.
in the grand scheme of things, it's roughly the same period of time.
Sure. Back then, what was the buying environment like? Like, what were hospitals even like ready to believe like AI could
Uh,
be trusted in like a?
yeah, great
'Cause I mean,
question.
even now, right? You still speak to people and
Yeah,
they're like, "Nah, I don't know." But
uh,
8 years ago, 9 years ago, I imagine it was tough.
yeah, your questions are great. So when we started, the buying environment was one, the like well-known AI companies back then were Zebra Medical
Yep.
and Vision and Arteris.
Yep.
So we would get these questions of, and back then we were a little startup, right? Just hustling. So we would get these questions of, how are you compared to Zebra?
Yep.
uh, and it's not like any companies back then had a big footprint, but like in relative terms, from a marketing and brand perspective, they were
Yep.
well known. And we thank them a lot. They kind of built the market and the awareness. Um, that was the beginning. And at that point in time, there's also this like feeling amongst some radiologists of, oh, AI will replace us. We're against
Hmm.
AI.
Yep.
Fast forward a few years, you started getting acceptance of, oh, we realize it's far from replacing us. We realize the potential value of it. We
Yep.
see that UAI companies start getting it and are starting to be mature.
Yep.
And then you had the early adopters. So
Hmm.
like we're willing to give it a try. We're willing to buy something small. So that was like a few years. So instead of 9 years ago, that was like 6 years ago.
Hmm.
Um, then say 3 years ago, we moved from more common acceptance of like, okay, we realize the value, like more health systems. We need to get in. We understand our top use cases. We've vetted the market and we believe in vendors A and B and use cases C, D, and E.
Yep.
And I think now where we are is the majority of health systems realize that the reality is unbearable. Put aside
Yep.
AI, at least in the US.
Yep.
Not enough radiologists, growing volumes,
Hmm.
worsening SLAs, burnout, etc. So like something has to save them and the system.
Yep.
And there isn't going to all of a sudden be an influx of radiologists, so it has to be technology. And
Yep.
then within technology, there are a few different plays, whether it's getting the best viewer,
Sure.
improving your reporting software, and or being AI powered.
Yep.
And then within that, we and companies like us are one of the potential plays there. And I think there's also now there are real RFPs and budgets, and it's all kind of becoming at scale from a commercial perspective.
Hmm.
And also, we as a company and our market as a whole is proving more and more of what we're saying with objective data and evidence. So, for example,
Sure.
AIDOC now has there are 230 clinical studies, meaning like real papers and abstracts, the vast majority of which are created without us being involved. We're not authors. We're not funding them.
Yeah.
Measuring different things related to various products of ours, starting with
Hmm.
accuracy, although
Yeah.
accuracy to me doesn't really mean anything,
Yeah.
all the way to like real impact, turnaround time, quality, length of stay, etc.
Hmm.
So it's less about pitches and us vendor, marketing, and it's more about objective data.
It's interesting what you said. And it's just an observation that I've made over the last couple of years. And you touched on workflow reporting companies or companies that build viewers. And the market really like ebbs and flows, right? When was it? 2-3 years ago when you had, was it Calantic and Blackford next to each other at RSNA, which is interesting. And the market for like platforms was booming, right? And then 2024, 25, who was a race? Rad AI and New Lantern, these types of reporting, sort of workflow type companies. Your Airs Medicals obviously doing very well, those types of companies, right? And now it's sort of coming back around again to more of the solutions. And I don't think there's necessarily a way to explain why, except for just saying technology is advancing so quickly that maybe the market can't necessarily keep up, right? Like 3-4 years ago, like I heard about foundational models for the first time at Sim 20, the last one, for like properly heard about foundational
Yeah.
models, right? I was speaking to Hopper and we were
Mhm.
having a chat about it. Next thing you know, we're having this conversation. Now you've had 12, 13, however many FDA clearances for these types of products. And I think the market is moving so quickly and hospitals are probably, I think, struggling. If I'm struggling to keep up and I'm in the market all day, I wonder about hospitals too, which sort of leads me to my next question, still about the past. In those early days, what killed deals most often? Because now I think it's complexity. There's so much to compare against. There's just, information overload. What was it back then?
New product category,
Yeah.
meaning they don't really know what it is. Internally, they need to explain and teach and
Yeah.
convince different stakeholders. There's no budget for it. So basically, the status quo killed deals.
Yeah.
And we wouldn't really lose to competitors. In
Yeah.
our Salesforce funnel, the late stage opportunities that didn't convert to closed one basically just lost momentum and were stuck there forever. So I think that was the reality, which has changed in most cases over the past couple of years. And now, I think maybe to connect to what you said, I think my view of the past 2 years
Yeah.
was basically like 2 years ago, yeah, there was this understanding of we kind of need a one-stop shop. We need a marketplace,
Yeah.
for lack of a better term. And there our messaging was and still is, you're absolutely right, but don't underestimate the technology needed for that marketplace to work well. You need not just the App Store in Apple terms, you need the iOS
Yeah.
in Apple terms, which is critical and very difficult, and
Yes.
many are underestimating. So that was 2 years ago. In the past year or last year, so to speak, I think the LLMs and ambient AI outside of radiology and within radiology, the reporting type of products have trended up a lot because it's valuable and it's
Yeah.
relatively straightforward. So I absolutely believe in that use case, and it should be. But what is now happening
Yeah.
is that market is starting to commoditize, funny enough.
Yeah.
Because ultimately it doesn't have the moat of FDA clearances. The technology is relatively available in an open source way, and or many are running it on
Yeah.
Dragon and other technologies. So they're not really building the AI itself. It's already kind of out there and available. So then it's a bunch of wrappers, and then the challenge with being a wrapper AI company is the platform and the incumbent and the existing product can add what you do as a feature, and can even give it away for free, and then you have a problem.
Yeah.
So I think that's what we're seeing now with the reporting market.
Yeah.
And the rehype of computer vision AI, the market we're in, is because of, like you're saying, foundation model. Now, foundation model one, like we've been investing in this for almost 3 years now.
Hmm.
At the beginning, we were skeptical. We had to try because the potential was huge if it worked, but we assumed it wouldn't work well.
Yeah.
And we started seeing signs that it is working well. And in the past 18 months, we're all in,
Yeah.
meaning everything we build now is based on that technology. And we're all in because we have the evidence and the belief that we don't know where it will end,
Yeah.
how crazy the results will be, but in the pessimistic scenario,
Yeah.
at the very least, it's going to be comprehensive detection with high accuracies
Hmm.
and pixel to report in most modalities.
Sure.
And pixel to report meaning image comes in, a draft of report comes out.
Nice.
And that's a very good
Yeah.
landing spot, right? So like even our pessimistic scenario is, in my opinion, very optimistic.
Yeah.
And if our belief is correct, and we have now the evidence of the interim steps to that, including our recent FDA clearance
Hmm.
for our abdomen comprehensive solution,
Yeah.
that means that all of a sudden AI can reach its hopeful holy grail potential, which is
Yeah.
not just providing value in specific care pathways,
Yeah.
but for the bread and butter for kind of, if I were to simplify everything. And
Yeah.
that can be a huge gain from a productivity perspective, a
Yeah.
quality, a workflow transformation, etc. And then even the reporting market is going to be influenced by that, and the viewer market, because if I can show 20 different findings and detect them and measure them and compare them,
Yeah.
what does the viewer of tomorrow look like? And what does the report of tomorrow look like if I can provide a draft?
Yeah.
And things in medicine are more difficult than they sound, so there's no easy solution there. There are lots of features and integrations needed to make that work perfectly.
Yeah.
I think that's the excitement, that's the stage, and I think it's not just science fiction. I earlier called it tomorrow. Tomorrow is already starting because for us, the core
Yeah.
FDA clearance was a few weeks ago, but
Hmm.
like the timeline is so short. Like our
Yeah.
roadmap has so many amazing things over the next 18 months, not
Nice.
over 5 years.
Yeah. You, I find it funny that you said FDA in the same sort of sentence. You said FDA and hopeful potential, because for me, getting FDA clearance means hopeful potential, but it doesn't mean production grade, right? There was
Agree.
700-800 algorithms approved last year, and probably 95% of those won't pass pilot or won't get installed or whatever it may be. So, like for you,
Yes.
what's the difference between being FDA cleared and being production grade?
First of all, I 100% agree with you. It's also why we, as kind of an ecosystem that also has third-party products, we don't onboard 300 FDA cleared
Yeah.
products because our bar, we qualify them ourselves because we don't want to waste anyone's time and money.
Yeah.
Um, because we develop AI and have implemented lots of AI and sold AI and had challenges, and it always isn't always perfect. We understand what the difference is between getting FDA clearance
Hmm.
and having a valuable product, and there's a big gap between the two. If you want,
Yeah.
I can explain the reasons.
Well, I think that's your
Uh,
secret sauce for ADOC is that you've had so many FDA clearances and you've also been very successful commercially, right? Whereas
yeah,
that's not really been too repeatable in the market yet.
right, right. And part of that secret sauce is the AIOS. Part of it is the experience and the timing,
Hmm.
and having had the opportunity to fail
Yeah.
and to learn from those mistakes and to then not make them again. So lots of things that worked out well together, and just a lot of effort, right?
Yeah.
I think I think that ultimately the difference between FDA clearances and in my earlier statement. So to me, when I treat FDA clearance
Mhm.
as pretty much the last step of proof
Yeah.
that my product is valuable and good, it's not because FDA clearance equals that.
Yeah.
It's because by now know that what I'm submitting to the FDA
Yeah.
also has passed 5 other tests of mine.
Sure.
So to me, it's just the FDA is the formal step I need,
Yeah.
because without it, I can't sell it. But if I got that and that's my last step, I know that the rest, like I know what else I need to succeed.
Yeah.
So I know I can pass the FDA accuracy thresholds by a little bit, by a lot.
Yeah.
It's not about passing that. It's about what is the accuracy I actually need for that specific use case for that
Yeah.
intended impact. And accuracy is just one piece, right? Workflow integrations, et cetera, et cetera. So you're right. Like most AI vendors that would treat FDA clearance as a sign that their product is great, that would be an incorrect assumption.
Yeah.
But with us, when I say that, I already take into account 5 other considerations.
Yeah. Yeah. It sounds like, I mean, you guys have the advantage of time, right? I'm sure there's been plenty of things that you've got approved that might not have made it into the hospital, or products you've worked on that you've disbanded. And it sounds like you've got those internal checks and balances, and I guess just super high standards that you probably know if the FDA are going to approve your product because you've done even sort of more rigorous testing than what they would have.
Correct. And part of the testing isn't on the benchmarks that they look at.
Yeah.
Right. So they don't look at how seamless is the workflow going to be, or how well do you integrate with systems, or how well are you at maintaining the AI. So yes, 100%. And, we've had products that weren't so good, and we upgraded them and received a new FDA clearance for a new version.
Yeah.
So it's not like everything is perfect out of the gate, but as we mature as a company, our recent and upcoming FDA clearances already have passed so many internal check marks for us that we miss less often nowadays.
Sure. Okay. And I think it's sort of public. I think you said 100. Is it over 100 million analyzed patient cases at this point? That type of scale, I think, implies, just a completely different operational reality to 1,000 patients, right? What do you have to? What does AIDOC have to have internally? And what have you built internally in order to support that volume? The reason I ask is because there's going to be people listening to this who have a company of 10 people, right? They've got loads of cool ideas, and everyone wants $370 million worth of funding. And so what do you need internally to get to that 100 million?
And it's quite crazy to think about things like 100 million for someone like me, right? So think about the early days when we didn't have anything and we just had a few slides and a prototype. First of all, 100 million means the following. It means, one, obviously, that you're installed in many places. So being installed in many places means to know how to do an effective implementation, to integrate with lots of different environments and IT systems, each of which is so different, and the project management and all the little things that actually are quite difficult. That's one. Two, it means to consume a big portion of the imaging in that hospital or health system or private radiology group. And then that leads to different modalities, and then even within a modality, even within, say, CT, so many protocols and ways to perform that scan and to save it, and different combinations of series and slice thickness and reconstructions and all that. So dealing with orchestrating all of that. And you can't do that on a per click, send this scan to this AI, because you'll never reach scale with that. So it's always on. It's doing that all automatically, which is super difficult. Then there's just the bread and butter infrastructure of moving lots of data, and high SLAs and not breaking, and opening lots of instances on the cloud and DevOps and scale and all that stuff. And then there's most people don't know this, but we have about 50 people, full-time employees around the world that basically do not just technical support of what any software would do, which someone calls you if something's broken, but actually do AI operations. What I mean by AI ops is, so I'll say things, but it doesn't mean that it's manual. I'll soon explain. But basically do monitoring, do changes to configurations, to orchestration, flag data drift, different things like that. Because the data is a moving target.
Yeah.
So unlike normal software that's dealing with consistent inputs, here it changes all the time. And especially at that scale,
Yeah.
you can't manually be on top of it. So we have so much technology in our AIOS that flags problems, automatically identifies accuracy changes and ranges. And there's so much sophistication just in that. Just to, for example, understand what your accuracy is automatically is very, very difficult. First of all, you need to consume the different types of data, but you also need to automatically run not just the computer vision AI, but also LLMs. And if you just use the out of the box, like OpenAI type LLMs on reports, it's going to be directionally good, but it's going to be not good enough. Because imagine now having a bunch of false alarms because the ChatGPT version of AI isn't good enough, and boom, you start thinking, and you start thinking there are problems that there aren't, or the other way around. So those are just examples of what 100 million means, and there's so many more.
Okay, and sort of just shift gears quickly, because one thing obviously I'm interested in is you've gone in 9 years from 1 to 2 people to what, nearly 400 people. 500 people. You are. I'm trying to think if there's anyone close. Cure AI maybe might be the biggest in terms of headcount, in terms of a pure AI company. Viz and Rapid probably not anymore.
Right.
I would assume now you are, in terms of pure headcount, probably revenue, the biggest. How? I mean, it's such an open-ended question, but I don't really know how better to put it. How do you scale from 2 to 500 people? How do you continue maintaining that sort of culture? How do you decide what roles to hire first, when to hire? Because we've seen, I mean, you would have seen how many people have you probably hired from other AI companies who have been laid off because they've overgrown, right?
Yeah. Well, that's a great question. Before that, just to share another benchmark, which I realized only recently. Also, when you compare us to like PACS companies, advanced visualization companies, companies with brands that are strong and that you kind of feel like every other hospital has them, we're also big compared to some of them, which is pretty crazy. By the way, big means we spend a lot of money. Spending a lot of money means we need a lot of funding. Having a lot of funding and getting more funding means we need to have a sustainable business model and revenue. So it's kind of like all these dependencies one on another. You get one wrong, it all breaks. And you gave examples of companies that overhired, et cetera, because they got one wrong or some of them wrong. First of all, the immediate answer is it's difficult and we're not perfect and it doesn't always work as planned. But to try to be a bit more specific, first of all, we try to project relatively well to forecast how many new implementations, how many new products, which types of new, and accordingly reverse engineer, okay, how many people do we need of what skill set, et cetera. So that's one part. The second part when we do these projections is to include the unknown unknowns.
Sure.
And we've had plenty of them where we thought entering prostate MR would be easier than it was, where we thought integrating with the EMR would be easier than it was, et cetera. So like having that tiger team and that extra capacity to support it. Yet not overdoing that, because if you miss your revenue goals and you overhire and all that, and then it all starts breaking, because then all your KPIs get messed up and then your investors get stressed out and your next investment will be challenging, etc. So there's no perfect answer other than understanding that scale is difficult, and understanding, you mentioned culture, I think that's an important one as well. When we were like 10 people or 50 people or 90 people, everyone knew everyone. And the leaders and their culture and what they brought and our values kind of trickled down naturally because everyone was exposed to everyone. And specifically at AIDOC, our leadership is very hands-on. And at some point, for sure now, like probably 50% of the company doesn't really know me or other leaders. So then you have to be more intentional with how you convey that culture and those standards. And you need to start thinking about how the second or third layers are now the ambassadors of that. So I think that's part of it. And I think our culture is good because I think we found this nice balance of, being that agile startup that takes risks and thinks big, challenges the status quo, but nowadays also with the standard of 100 million patients and what that means and kind of being a critical infrastructure. So there's no magic answer there, but those are some of the considerations.
Difficult, isn't it?
Very.
Because I mean, guess we work with so many companies, they get it wrong so often. I think there is, if there was
Everyone
a
will get it. Depends how
yeah,
bad you get it wrong.
yeah. I mean, it's our day job, and we still get it wrong, right? So it's it's not easy. And I know you wanted to sort of just circling back to the beginning of our conversation. You mentioned the future quite a lot, and was it last year? You got a big round of funding for care, right? For that sort of model. What a lot of people will know sort of roughly about it, but as it starts to become more prevalent, the sort of angle I'm more interested in as a natural sort of salesperson, does it make it easy, the sales pitch easier because it's one platform, many findings, or is it harder because hospitals fear complexity and trying to tell them what this sort of product is, can be probably quite daunting?
I think it's easier,
Yeah.
and we're just in the beginning, right? So I can't
Yes.
say with 100% confidence. But it's easier. It's easier because ultimately the message is all of a sudden becomes relatively simple. As funny as that sounds, the message is, "Hey, here's my platform, my AI operating system, and it's proven scalable, robust, etc." And that's kind of that's like an obvious need. So I don't need to convince anyone that that's important.
Yeah.
There's lots of details there for them to believe me and for me to prove that that's true. But like the concept is easy.
Yeah.
And then the second concept is, hey, AI that can move the needle on steroids and be comprehensive and cover all acute disease or all chronic disease or automatically draft a report, etc. That's a relatively easy concept to explain. Now, much more difficult to actually do than to say, but sure. And then because the underlying problem in most countries is so big, and those concepts are relatively straightforward, and their value and their connection to the underlying problem is relatively straightforward. I think overall the narrative is relatively straightforward. So I think for us, our present and even more so our future will make it easier to sell. Of course, we then have to deliver with all due respect to selling. There's also the aspect of being now one of the leading companies, et cetera, which doesn't harm, obviously. But I think the pure product and play and use cases and value become more straightforward. So I think the trend is good.
And in terms of value, do you are you out pitching? I guess in the early days, it probably was pitching like real sort of value, clinical outcomes and accuracy. And now the conversation seems to have shifted a lot more to workflow sort of standardization, right? And a product that can do it all. Like if a product can find a lung nodule, great. But what can it do with that information? Because I think you probably get to a point where you get, I don't know if there's a term for it, alert fatigue maybe. You get all these alerts, even for you guys, right? If you do an abdomen scan and like how do you prevent that sort of additional burnout?
Yes, it's a great question. First of all, as it relates to the metrics themselves, which also sometimes lead to different clinical studies, some of which are done independently and we don't even know of them, and then they're published and we see them for the first time. Accuracy is always relevant because the AI is only as good as its accuracy, but the accuracy isn't the only part that makes it good or bad. But accuracy kind of doesn't mean anything because if I told you algorithm X is 97% sensitive or 92% or 99.1%, what the heck does that mean? It doesn't mean anything without context of, okay, what is that disease? What's the problem? What's the use case? How good is a radiologist in comparison to me, etc. So I think for whatever reason, we as humans are just used to seeing numbers. And, in high school or whatever, we had grades, and depends where you grew up. It was either like an A, B, C or like a 9 out of 10 or whatever. So we're used to numbers and these scores. So we always kind of go to them as our kind of intuition. So it's important, but it doesn't really mean anything. And, every so often there's a study that says, oh, we measured company X and their accuracy was Y. And Y is a bit surprising because of whatever, but all those studies need to also be taken into context. And the context is, what's the intended use case? When you say Y is good or bad,
Yeah.
is it bad at the intended use case or bad in what reference, and does it matter, etc.
Yeah.
So that's accuracy. But now I'm going to reverse the sentiment that I just shared. You gave the example of alert fatigue for diagnostic radiologists. So they're already kind of burned out. So the last thing we want as AI companies is to create AI alert fatigue. We want to create value, not harm them. So that's where all of a sudden two things matter. One, accuracy. There's no way to get around that. And that's why, for example, our CARE, which is the name of our foundation model, has unlocked for us the combination of comprehensiveness and breadth together with accuracy. So it's kind of this holy grail that we never were able to achieve. In the past, we kept going finding by finding and not doing many at a time because deep learning had its limitations. And we knew that if we were to try to find 100 things, our accuracy wouldn't be good enough and we'd create crazy alert fatigue. So we never went for those use cases, even though they made sense. Because we knew that technology-wise, it wouldn't be good enough and it would do more harm than good. All of a sudden with CARE, that's possible. And for example, in our recent announcement, we showed the FDA pivotal study that we submitted to the FDA, and it was the types of accuracies that we never had, like 98 and 99% accuracy. At that level of accuracy, you can both look for many things and not have much alert fatigue. That's one point. The second point is workflow. So don't just be accurate. Show me things that matter and don't show me things that don't matter. And that goes back to the AI operating system, not just being an algorithm, but a real solution. So I could be accurate and always find things that are correct, but in the context of that patient and that scan, they're irrelevant. So de facto, I'm creating alert fatigue for radiologists. That's the second part that matters. And each one of these pieces is kind of technology and sophistication to make all that work.
Sure. Okay, and then I guess I've always been really curious with AIDOC long term, and I'm going to play how do I put this? A fake news journalist with some of these questions. Some of the conversations that I've had with people externally, and look, it's always going to be based on people who don't understand fully what you guys are working on and all that sort of stuff, right? But on the outset, you see all of this funding, right? And some people may know what your revenue is, some people might not, right? And they think, what's the exit strategy? You could be bought, you could be, I imagine it'd probably be IPO, right? But in your mind, what does IPO ready mean? Where do you need to get to in order to be at that point? Not because, partially because I want to get in early and get those get in early, but what does that actually mean?
Well, first of all, there are the basic questions. Yes, IPO is our strategy. And sustainability is our strategy. IPO is just a way to continue being sustainable. First of all, what it means is the standard things that the public markets expect, which is predictability, consistency, good measurements, all of that. So remember earlier how we talked about growth of the org and good forecasting, and so all of that is related. So that's part of just natural maturity of a business. It's true for every business. The last thing you want is to be a public market that completely misses one way or another every quarter, and then the market kills you. So that's one part of being IPO ready. The second part of being IPO ready, if I ignore the generic answer, that's true for any company. In our case, what we want to be to feel ready to IPO is to continue being that one platform for, at the very least, medical imaging AI, where the vast majority of medical imaging AI in a health system is provided by us, provided not commercially, so to speak, even though that's also part of it, but from a real delivery and technical perspective. Some can be built by us, some can be built by others. And essentially where most health systems have this, it provides most of the potential use cases out there, and the impact is very significant, and it's a no-brainer. Obviously, we believe we have some of it. We're trending towards that. But the holy grail is where it's a complete no-brainer and the impact is so big and the breadth is so extensive that it's clear, just like some other like mainstream products and solutions in health systems or outside of healthcare that are that. So we believe that is like we're trending that way, and we believe that is going to be the reality in 2 years, give or take.
Sure.
That's the goal.
I'm just trying to think of companies at Heartflow. They've been and done it. That was. I mean, it's big in outside of radiology. Like, we work with a lot of companies who I saw your size and they go public. And I think, you mentioned predictability, revenue scale obviously has to be there. I mean, net retention, customer concentration, margin profile, that sort of fun stuff. But I think, we're seeing companies, including like yourself, getting funding for products that aren't yet proven, because I guess you've proven yourself in the past, right? You built a successful business.
The machine is proven.
Yeah.
The future output isn't, but there's belief that the machine will continue working.
They're betting on the future, right? This is sort of a separate kind of question, but related. I've worked with companies. Most of the companies I work with are all VC backed, right? VC, PE backed, whatever you want to call it, right? And they struggle because these VCs don't understand healthcare sales, especially in radiology, especially in software, and in particular AI, right? It can take 18 months, 24 months to sell a PAC system, right? To sell a single algorithm. If you're already in the hospital, it could be 3-4 months, right? It could look up to a year. The sales cycle is so long.
Yep.
And VCs don't understand that they're not radiology salespeople. How have you managed that challenge?
I think at some point in the kind of life stage of the company, so when you're like seed, Series A, etc., then yes, the VCs investing in you probably aren't experts in this field. So they're a bit naive, and there's a misaligned expectation, and oftentimes it will lead to bad results. At some point, the VC doesn't need to be an expert because the numbers speak for themselves, right? So like in the more mature companies, the numbers are the proof versus the understanding of the concepts. Not that the numbers are bulletproof, they aren't either, and technology is moving and so many things are changing, but at the very least as it relates to some of the things you just mentioned there. So from an external perspective, that's my answer. Internally, we do understand the challenges and the unique characteristics. So when we build our business and plan for it, we take that into account. And then lastly, I think it depends on the strategy of the company, right? I think they're very legitimate alternative approaches. You could be super specialized and be really impactful at a specific domain, like, for example, HeartFlow, where they started with FFR and then plaque, but everything they're doing is in that zip code of heart disease, right? And CTAs, cardiac CTAs. So, or say they expand from there, they're still going to stay most likely in there. So they'll move from cardiac CTAs to maybe cardiac MRIs. That's one very legit approach, and many companies are succeeding that way, and HeartFlow is an amazing company. And then there's our approach, which our approach is more broad and a bit less focused, even though it has to be somewhat focused, because then you have a bunch of like immaterial products. And our approach is like, we want to create the one holy grail platform, again, sorry to use that term, for the health system. And that brings other challenges, other opportunities. It also means you have to, because I mentioned some examples of all this sophisticated technology, you need to spend a lot on R&D. We're very R&D oriented and have really talent, like good talent for that. So the two different approaches, different potential endings, different probabilities, advantages and disadvantages to each. I think so. You earlier mentioned the 10-person startup that might be listening to us. I think that's a key question for that startup. Like, what's their end goal, and accordingly, how to build their business, including their go-to-market strategy, to reach that goal.
Cool. Okay. Well, look, my final question, I think it's important to bring back, why you guys exist in the first place, which is hospitals and benefiting doctors, right? And ultimately improving patient care. my final question is: when you think of a radiologist, today that's using AIDOC, what do you hope feels different about their day in 5 years' time because of what you've achieved?
Um, Amazing question. 5 years, wow. I think let's go 3 years. It's a little easier
Let's go
to
for it.
imagine. So much is changing even
Yes, I
in
know.
18 months. Um, in 3 years, I expect the radiologist workflow to kind of look as follows. First of all, the kind of the manual aspects of being a radiology are mitigated, meaning all the hanging protocols and all that type of stuff. And by the way, not everything I'm saying is related to ADOC, right? But like the whole
Yeah,
combination. So one, it's very simple and efficient to be a radiologist, no mundane
yeah,
tasks. Two, AI is it's kind of like Minority Report with Tom
yeah.
Cruise. The AI is already measured, detected, shows the insights, the predictions,
Hmm.
and then the radiologist is using their intelligence and their full context
Yeah,
to decide, to do the real differential diagnosis, which with a bunch of pre-created indications by AI, but served in a seamless manner.
yeah,
So the draft report will already exist and be shown. The key measurements and visual signs will appear naturally in the viewer,
yeah,
and they'll focus their intelligence on deciding
yeah,
and on cognition and less on manual, because the manual work is not the best use of their time and it burns them out, and that's probably not why they studied medicine. So I think that's the future radiologists and
hmm,
workflow, and I think that's a much better way to practice that burns out less
for
and
sure.
focuses their time and attention on what really matters.
Yeah. Well, look, I'm glad you guys are leading the way. You've got a lot of good people. Obviously, thanks for obviously Ben connected us. I've known Ben for a little while now, so you've got a lot of smart people working for you. So,
Thank
I
you.
mean, fingers crossed. 3 years time, it's exactly as you predicted. If not, I mean, look, it could be better because we don't know what's coming out, right? That's the exciting part is you just don't know because of how fast things are developing. Um,
Agreed.
some sort of hardware development could unlock the software development, right? Um, so I mean, look, that's really everything from me. Unless you have anything else you want to add, anything else you want to plug, what you guys are working on, what to expect. I
I
think
think
we
we
have much
covered
more.
it all naturally, and thank you
We
for
did.
the candid conversation, and your questions were thoughtful, and you obviously understand the space. So I really enjoyed our conversation, and that's
Nice.
it.
Well, I appreciate your time. Thank you.
You likewise. Take care. Bye bye.
Cheers. Bye.